Welcome to As Read by Me, the podcast for colorful bite-sized stories as can only be told by their authors. Today's author is Peter Waitze.
Hello, my name is Peter Waitze, and this is a story entitled Angels, as read by me. What follows was written somewhere around 10 or 15 years ago. It was submitted as a guest opinion in my local newspaper, the Bucks County Courier-Times, and it was in response to an article they published against a then recently enacted law that allowed same-sex marriage in Massachusetts. The editor refused to print this letter. He said if he did, they'd come after me and kill me. That's a quote. That's really what he said. I assured him they, whoever they were, would come after me, not him. But he wasn't convinced, so he never published it. It has always been one of my favorites, and it's about angels, and here's how it goes. The population of the world is growing, and the trend is that it will continue to grow. Many people believe we are born with a guardian angel. So that means that the supply of guardian angels has to be increasing at the same rate as the world population. And that brings up the question, where are all these angels coming from? Does God have a factory? Does he have a factory in heaven? Or are they creating themselves in the same way that we humans create one another? Some years ago, my wife volunteered us to assist at a fundraising event. After our shift was over, the organization provided us with stale refreshments as compensation for our efforts. As we were sitting around a table chatting, one of the other volunteers stood up and proclaimed, "I know everything there is to know about angels. If you want to know anything about them, ask me." I accepted his offer and I asked him, "What do they have for breakfast?" I've never heard of a sick angel, and they seem to have long lives, so I figured, hey, if we mortals could eat the same thing as the angels, perhaps we could enjoy better health and increase our life expectancy too. He apparently didn't think my question was reasonable, and he didn't answer me. Instead, he got red in the face, glared at me, and then he quickly stomped out of the room. I never got a chance to ask him my follow-up question, which was, where do all the angels come from? Their existence and their large numbers have puzzled me until now. Here is my answer to my own follow-up question. I don't think God has a factory, because if God were creating them, there'd be some uniformity of competence, and it is obvious that the competence of the guardian angels is erratic. Some people have charmed lives. Other people live in misery. So the guardian angels aren't being created with cookie-cutter abilities. That suggests they have to be creating themselves the same way we do it. They do it with the same mixed results. In other words, angels engage in sex. There's a strong belief in Satan, but I've never heard of a Mrs. Satan. When Abraham in the biblical story entertained guests in his tent, the guests, said to be angels, were men. Gabriel and Michael are the only angels with a name, and they are males. Actually, the only angels I've ever heard about are males, and if all the angels are males, then angelic procreation is a strictly male enterprise. The conclusion is therefore obvious. Since there were angels before there were people, except for the heterosexuals that get there, heaven was initially and still is overwhelmingly populated by gays. If gays in heaven are having sex, and if the only sex God allows is between married couples, then God has given his blessings to, and he himself is performing same-sex marriages. Since religious people want to duplicate here on earth what takes place in heaven, then same-sex marriage should be allowed for the gays here in the United States too. It thus turns out that Massachusetts, when it recognized same-sex marriage, was simply carrying out God's plan. New Jersey and Vermont allow same-sex unions, and they are on the right path, but obviously they aren't exactly right with God. Because we like to think of ourselves as a godly people, the religious folks who have opposed same-sex marriage should recognize that when they say gays are immoral, they are making a terrible, terrible mistake. They should stop their discrimination. They should stop their discriminatory utterances and stop their practices and stop calling for a constitutional amendment banning gay marriage. Instead, they should be insisting that gays be encouraged to marry, and the errant clerics who opposed it should now be proud to be godlike in performing the gay marriages in their houses of worship. Amen.
thanks for joining us on As Read by Me. For show notes, please visit asreadbyme.com/notes. If you're a writer and would like to read one of your stories in an upcoming episode, send an email to writers@asreadbyme.com.